This is not another ecom podcast. I'm Ian Kaneshiro. In the ever-changing world of business, achieving success isn't just about having a good strategy or executing plans well. It's also about how you view the challenges and setbacks. Even though hurdles are a part of the journey, it's your ability to stay positive that makes a difference. In today's uncertain landscape, optimism and a hopeful mindset can be useful tools, not just for surviving tough times, but for discovering opportunities that may be hidden within the difficulties. So stay tuned as we dive into the art of seeing on the bright side, where resilience, creativity, and staying positive light the way to success in the business world. And today we have a special guest, Kris McCauley, an e-commerce specialist with a background in Amazon FBA, along with a handful of other hustles. Kris has collectively sold over $8 million online since 2010 and now focuses on other income streams along with creating content. Kris's goal is to help break the traditional relationship between time and money so that you can focus more on your passions and adding value to the world. So Kris, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so Kris, before we dive into it, can you give us a little bit of a background about what you do and kind of your history?
Yeah, so as of right now, I currently I have a few different businesses. So I have an e-commerce business focused on Amazon, and then I also have a YouTube channel, as well as some other income streams around that. And I have some other businesses / side hustles that I work on as well. But those are my two main ones right now. And it started with e-commerce though back in around 2011. So that's when I got my start. And then I was doing that through college, got out of college, realized, hey, this kind of sucks working for someone else. And I was setting my own schedule through college. And then my goal was I built something while I was in that job, and then eventually left the job to go back to full-time e-commerce. That's it in a nutshell.
Right on. And so, when you're making that change, to go to full-time in the Amazon space and e-commerce, and you're kind of building your own business, there's a lot of ups and downs. And do you have any, personal examples from your own business journey where things went wrong, but you were able to find something positive within that struggle?
Yeah, it's literally like there's so many of them, but I remember one in particular, and it had to do with how I buy Amazon FBA inventory. And there was this one purchase I ended up going in on, and it was these controllers. And I bought a lot of them, and the ROI was like 20%, but it ended up being about 8 weeks worth of inventory. And so a 20% ROI is good, but it ended up the prices ended up tanking. If you're not familiar with Amazon FBA, the price wars happen, all this other stuff. And so anyway, I ended up barely making any money on it, but it ended up setting up this rule that I used for all inventory purchases going forward, where I'm like, I want at least 10% ROI per week's worth of inventory, because it takes into account the later on the back end tail of the inventory as well, right? And so that's still to this day, it's one of the most important metrics I use when making inventory purchases. And it all came from this mistake. Luckily I didn't lose any money on it, but it was, it was pretty close. So.
Right. So what I'm hearing is that, one of the ways that you can kind of turn the tables, you can pivot in situations like this, is trying to find the learning experience from it, trying to understand, what went wrong, and how can I do better next time?
Yeah. I like to look at all this stuff as what it's like, I'm only this thing that I can only see from what's in my view. Right. And so, but if you're playing a video game and you're controlling the character, it's like, what you need to do. And when you fail to do that, why. And sometimes it's, we are the video game character, from that perspective. And it's hard to know. There isn't an outline of a game or a level or anything. And the way I look at it is just that what I'm doing right now, it's I don't know, I'm figuring it out, and I'm trying to figure out how to get to that end of the level. It's just part of the process, I guess, is what I'm saying. Like, I don't take it personal. I don't really let it discourage me. People all the time say I'm a really optimistic person. That's a lot of people say that. And I just think I just am really good at seeing the silver lining on things. And there was a psychologist, and he looked at the 4 characteristics of a successful person. And I forget the psychologist. I forget it was, I didn't come prepared with that, but I do remember one of them though one of them was being resilient, but another one of those things was an unparalleled way of seeing things through a positive lens. That's like it was a characteristic across no matter what field you look at. So I think I'm definitely, that's one of my strengths for sure.
Yeah, and I think that being positive is something that's almost easier said than done. And oftentimes, people might say like, Kris, you're super optimistic, but I'm sure there's times where you might look at a situation and you're not feeling so optimistic, and it's really tough. Do you have any tools? Do you have any, mindsets, mantras, or anything like that you use when you find yourself in those situations to kind of pull yourself out of that and get back into like the optimistic Kris mindset?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some times, even just like I'm in so many different business ventures where some of my business ventures and people that I work with, I'm very optimistic about. But then there's others where I'm a bit more cynical, and I don't necessarily force trying to get back to a positive mindset. I think the first question I want to ask when I find myself doing that is, why am I like this? And is it serving a purpose? Like, maybe being cynical, maybe there is a reason to be cynical in a particular situation. I don't know. I'm not saying, I'm not advocating for a cynical point of view, but try to be self-aware of your emotions. And at least that's what I'm trying to do. I try to be self-aware and just ask myself, why am I like this? Is it serving a purpose? If I do, to get to your question though, if I do find myself where I'm trying, maybe it isn't serving a purpose. I don't know. I think just doing things that I like doing. I think just maybe switching things up. Like I have hobbies, and focusing on those hobbies, taking a break and getting the endorphins flowing. Like I like working out, and just anything to get some endorphins flowing and maybe, shift or unsettle those negative views.
Totally. I hear that as well. And I think that that's actually something that's often overlooked in, the go world that we're in, when our emotions are starting to get the best of us, that sometimes we're trying to push through. Right. And what I'm hearing from you is that it's important to take that break and to go and do something that, might not fulfill, your business goal in the moment right now, but maybe it fulfills like something in the soul that will, kind of recharge you to allow you to come back in and tackle that problem with a clear head.
Yeah. Kind of like 1 step back, 3 steps forward or something like that. Yeah. But that's exactly what I'm saying, man. Yeah. So many different ways to cut it.
So in terms of being able to maintain that positive outlook, I think it's important to acknowledge that, especially in the Amazon space, kind of the world that we live in, that you live in, as well as an Amazon seller, that there's things that are constantly changing. And sometimes our attitudes are affected by the things that are, hurting us, that are pulling us down day after day. And so we need to find ways to kind of take over those daily struggles in terms of finding the right tool for the job or the right person for the job. Have you found yourself in any situations where you're just like where you found a task that you can't stand, but then you found a solution for it, whether it be a tool or a person that kind of helped you along the way?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's exactly the right. I mean, that's it. I think I totally agree with you. First off, if there's something that you don't like to do, that's going to lead you. It's probably going to lead you to procrastinating or just not doing as good of a job as possible. So maybe find someone that does like doing it, or someone that may be even better at it, right? And yeah, I mean, I think, for example, I mean, I make videos on YouTube, and I don't like video editing. I never have video edited ever since I made my very first video that's even really bad. So terrible. Still outsourced the video editor. But I mean, I think it was in 2021, I was like, I'm going to take this seriously. And I put out an application. I tested out 20 different editors and really found a guy who I try to find people that are passionate and positive. Those are two traits you just can't you can't teach that. You can teach anyone anything. They could be the best in the business, but if they don't, it's like if they're not passionate and positive, that they will end up surpassing other people that are good. I mean, even Mr. Beast has gone on the record and said that's what he looks for. And in 2 years' time, those people will surpass everyone that was good before. So yeah, those are really the two traits I look for. But what was the second part? I feel like I didn't answer part of that question.
Yeah, we were just talking about, finding either the right people, the right tools to take something off the plate, take that thing that you don't really like.
Yeah, tools too. I mean, man, with AI right now and all the ability, like, I mean, there's tools for there's some things that I don't even like. It's like if I'm looking for a problem to solve, I'll just go to Google. And there was this AI software that I found. It was months ago, but anyway, it was allowed me to like read from my script, and it changes my eye contact. So it'll make it to where like my eyes look like I'm looking at the camera, but I'm able to read it. So like it was taking my filming down, takes my filming down so quick. I'm working on this AI bot that's going to help me make YouTube scripts. That's the longest part for me making YouTube videos is the scripts. And so working on that. So I'm all for tools. I'm all for, especially given, the last couple of years or so with everything that's been made. So yeah, it's pretty wild out there right now.
So it sounds like you have a bunch of tools for, your creative projects. Do you have any tools that are, more specific towards Amazon sellers that you can't live without?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, you got the big three, right? When it comes to Amazon selling, you have to, keep up for sales history. That's non-negotiable. Then you have to, and then you have some type of like sales estimator, and there's a bunch of those. I use Ace and Zen. There's a few of those, and then there's the repricer, right? Which you guys have, Seller Snap, which still to this day is the best repricer I've ever used. And those are three. Where it's like if you were to manually reprice your items, I know I did this before. I would hire someone to manually reprice items, and they were working, I don't know, like 20 hours a week just repricing stuff before we got you guys. And so, I mean, save so much money. If you can just find a tool that needs to do what you're going to do, it's going to save so much money and time.
Yeah, I think that that's like one of the ways that I really like to look at it. First of all, thank you for bringing up Seller Snap, but that's not totally the reason why we're here today, because we want to keep pulling stuff out from the knowledge of your brain. But always love the shout out to.
That's how we met, man. That's how we met. Was through. Yeah, it's so crazy.
Yeah,
I was years ago. I need to get this. We need a better repricer setup. So it's like that's how we met.
But I think that the thing that is really important to mention is that, we have this ability to outsource all of our problems. This is like, and by outsourcing our problems, I don't mean always like going, outside of your company or your organizational unit, but just anything that you don't want to do if you can find there's ways to make it easier. And I'll give you an example is, I worked for this organization many years ago where, I had this friend that I worked with, and what we would do is we'd have like these laundry lists of our to-do list, and then we would prioritize it. And then at the top of it, we'd put the one or two things that we don't want to do, like that, like it's most important, but I don't want to do it. And then we would trade. And so we'd find ourselves in these situations where we're trading away our worst, our worst task, but the task that I got in return wasn't much better. But that like mindset of like, oh, I kind of won this deal, was enough to just be able to knock out that task and kind of move on with the day. And then I found that my day felt lighter because I had that huge weight lifted off my shoulders. So I think it's like, especially, if you have people, in your organization, if you're an Amazon seller, you have, 2 or 3 people, finding ways that are kind of fun to also offload tasks is super important. And it kind of brings us back to, keeping that positive outlook of saying like, it needs to be done, but if I feel better because I made my partner's life easier and they also made mine, it like really helps propel you through the day.
Yeah, man. I mean, I like that idea too of switching the lists. I mean, that I've never heard of that before, but that's a really cool idea too.
Yeah, because it brings up this like idea of like teamwork and camaraderie as well. Because then at the end of the day, like, if you and I switch our hardest problems and you figured mine out and I figured your out, we just became that much closer as a team, going towards a common goal. And that's at the end of the day, as businesses, we have those common goals that we need to accomplish.
Yeah, man. No, it's critical. So I might take that for myself. Yeah.
But in terms of like, Amazon sellers and how we operate, what are some, common misconceptions in, the day of an Amazon seller that we need to talk about, especially for the new ones out there?
I mean, if we're talking, there's so many different ways to sell on Amazon. If I'm looking at like some underlying themes, like some basic ones are just focus on the numbers. Don't get wrapped up in revenue. Figure out a way to get a steady stream of products that doesn't require your time as much. So if you're doing retail arbitrage and you have to go out to the store and you're having to do that, then I don't know how, like, automated retail arbitrage is pretty tough. I would be trying to figure out ways to get in some better scalable business models. If you're in wholesale, build a team around reaching out to people. Talk about like psychologically staying positive. I mean, if you're doing all of this yourself, and I tell people to reach out to 25 emails a day, 5 days a week, that's 500 emails a month at least. And if you're getting, so many no's yourself, you have to see all of those no's. But if you have a team or like a guy or two that does all that for you, you don't even have to see all the no's. All you get to see are the lists that are ran that are coming back with profitable products. And psychologically, I mean, imagine it's like when you see the snapshot of Michael Jordan, like all the videos after his career, we never talk about his bad games. We never talk about his missed shots. It's literally just all the shots he made. But I mean, think of all the ups and downs he had to go through. And sometimes I like to think about those during my hard days too. But to get back to what I was saying, like, you don't even have to see any of those. You're just seeing the shots that are made or whatever. So that's like a psychological, like, setting you up for success or whatever. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Yeah, totally. But the interesting thing is, when we kind of are able to, put up those blinders, so to speak, or put an extra level of separation between those no's, you do have your team members that do have to go through that, and do have to be super, super resilient and positive in order to get to those yeses. What is a way, as as a business leader, that I can support that team member in doing their goals when they have to be the ones to be resilient. Because it's kind of it's really easy to sit back and say like, I just want the good news, but at certain points we have to look out for our people as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think just, I don't think everyone's going to be fit for that. Like, not everybody's meant to do cold outreach. I mean, it takes a special type of person, number one. But like things we could do to assist with that would just be, I actually got this from Reezy Resells. I don't know if you guys follow him or not, but I actually got this. I went to tour his warehouse. This was right before COVID started, and he had this book warehouse. And what he did was he has these guys that are going through these big book bins. There's a name for them. Oh, like John Gaywards or something like that. They're picking books, and what they're doing is that they are not a very few books are going to be good, right? And so what he did was not only did he set like a record showing like how many were found each day to try and just show like a metric like that, but he set up a contest between all of the book pickers, if that's what you want to call them. And it was whoever had the most valuable book that day got like, I don't know, it was some cash.
Got a bonus,
whatever. Yeah. And that was fun. It turned it kind of into this game. And he showed the results before and after he implemented these two things. And I forget the exact increase, but it was substantial. I mean, it was absolutely substantial. Not only did the output increase, but I mean, imagine psychologically what that did to the workers too. I mean, they were, so excited to be like, oh, okay, like this is a game now. Like I'm going to try and find the most valuable book, and you don't even really think about the duds anymore,
Yeah.
So
yeah, it puts a bit of it gamifies work, and I think
which is great. It's a great thing to do. Yeah.
I think that finding ways to have healthy competition in between teams and kind of gamify the work process can be a really great way to keep people motivated, but also incentivizing them, whether it's cash bonuses, holidays, whatever, can be a super great way as well. And I think that's finding different ways to support our people is super, super important. Where I thought you were going with that story was something that I heard from a seller that about a year ago, that was telling me how they support their employees in the warehouse, about setting them up for success. And so what the seller was doing was they were finding that the workstations were set up in really poor ways. And so they started counting steps of the workers and finding that like this worker always had to go and search for scissors or tape or whatever. And it was causing, high employee turnover and a lot of burnout and lost time as well. But then when he really like dug in and was able to find the, what tools need to be in reach, right here, right in front of your face, that the workers overall had higher output because they felt supported by the boss. There was always the tools of the trade right in front of them. And so I think that there's a whole bunch of different questions we can ask ourselves as like team leaders, and how we can support people so when they walk in the door that they're feeling positive about, their day.
And also, just like you just mentioned, feeling positive about like just being supported, like knowing that your boss has your back. Because I've worked so many jobs, and there have been some jobs where I did not feel like that, where the boss genuinely had my back and was rooting for me. And it creates this, negative, this entirely like negative environment and whatnot. So that's a huge too.
Most definitely. And you're right in that positivity and drive and hard work are things that like kind of trickle down in businesses. And so it needs to come from the leaders of the business. in order to kind of flow throughout the rest of the organizational structure, for sure.
For sure.
So Kris, as we kind of wrap up, I mean, do you have any final thoughts, any advice that you have for entrepreneurs or business owners who might be going through a tough time or struggling to see the positive points right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and this, I still have to even remind myself of this currently. It's not like everything is always in business. It's not like everything's easy sailing all the time, and you're still going to go through things. For me, it always helps to remember that even some of them, like whoever you look up to, like whoever that is, right, in whatever capacity, they have gone through some stuff too. And there's so many people that are going through similar things. And for me, I get a lot out of that, just knowing that, okay, this person has gone through this before. They succeeded. They did what they needed to do. And so if they can do it, I can do it. That's my train of logic. And so I like to, whether it be reading a book, watching a YouTube video, listen to a podcast, interacting in Facebook groups, find those stories that you can dig into. I think David Goggins calls it your cookie jar. Well, it's kind of similar to where it's, you build up the cookie jars, you build up these things of yourself where you're like, oh, I've done this before, so I can do this. So you already have your own cookie jar, but see what else is in other people's cookie jar and kind of add that fuel to your fire too. So, and at the end of the day, the last thing I'll say is what makes me feel better is I just go about really, really far, and I'm like, I'm in this tiny little blip of time. We're getting existential here.
Yeah, we're up.
And I'm like, however long I'm alive, it's all going to be forgotten. And like, by the time I die, like pretty much like a week or two after I die, these problems, I'm going to forget all about them. Everybody's going to forget all about them. It's really not that big of a deal. And to me, that just kind of, it kind of takes some pressure off. And it just makes it to where sometimes that's, that's like an immediate thing. But
it's what the Stoics say, it's you're just like this grain of salt on this vast beach that goes on forever.
And it can give you power. That, like, being the grain of salt is almost a way of it's like it's also powerful in a sense too. So it's like, hey, this isn't that big of a deal, guys. Like, it's going to be okay. That's what I tell myself anyway.
Yeah, I love that. One tool that a friend shared with me recently was, and actually me and my wife, we use this at home, is that when there's something that comes up that it's a problem and super frustrating, we try to ask ourselves, is this going to be a problem in 15 minutes? Is this going to be a problem in an hour? Is this going to be a problem tomorrow? Next week, next year? And so we don't have the answers to the problem, to the problems or to those answers, but we know that, it puts in perspective that no, it's not going to be a problem next week. I'm no longer to be mad about this thing next week. And it helps kind of center us as a couple, but also myself personally, to put things into perspective that, we're just this grain of sand on this vast beach of nothingness that goes on forever. And you gotta sometimes just let things go.
Exactly.
So this was Kris McCauley, Amazon seller, serial entrepreneur, side hustler, actual hustler. Thank you so much for joining us today on Not Another Econ podcast. And I really hope you enjoyed yourself, and we'll have to have you back soon.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for having me on, Ian. It was a pleasure to get to talk with you today.